It'd be nice if I spoke Latin and or read Latin. I could tell what some of that might be saying. Here I'm looking at the other arched portion, and you don't see any of that indentation or seat thing that I was talking about. You do see a different level, and that suggests that perhaps a wall was built. I mean, a floor was built on that, but I'm just guessing. Now, this is easily walked up through by one person. Two people could pass each other sideways, but presumably the archaeologists are working on that area and covered it with plastic until they get back on to it. We're looking back at the northern part, and notice that there would have been a complex over there of buildings or rooms, and something over here rather clearly so. How far extended this way I don't know, but at this end, and ranging off towards the southeast at this point, is what you're seeing in front of the camera. Now, looking to the south almost, it looks like there's probably more over here, but it just hasn't been excavated. Whether that mound is an original mound before archaeologists started working, or whether it represents where their fill is, I don't know. Theoretically, it shouldn't have their fill there. You hear this gravel is holding down this plastic, which is covering probably an original floor made of tile. I mean, original at the last time before it got destroyed by something. Here, a pretty substantial wall, and these may have been buttresses, or they may have been for columns. If the wall came up a little ways and stopped, and then the columns rose up further, and this was a portico where you entered through archways like that. I don't know. But were these rooms? They appear to be, but why so far down? I didn't think they had basements, but maybe they did. Here again on this corner, or this side of that same corner, the same design of these pedestals, perhaps for columns. So maybe this was an entire large building complex right in here, subdivided into rooms, but with perhaps lovely colonnades, at least on two sides, if not all four. Here you can see that archaeologists are working on this very portion. They've left their tools sitting right here. If down there is a level of paving, let's go see. Yeah, here you can see I've uncovered some plastic. Here they've excavated out some very nice large stones. Stones that in this area you would think took quite a bit of effort to get here. Of course, maybe all these stones did. I don't know what underlies this land. And this looks like the archaeologists have just put a little layer of cement on that to contain the surface. But here we're standing on a fairly thick wall, again, unless this is some kind of a walkway. Here's some walls intersecting at strange angles. But notice that represents down there a considerable drop in height from where we are right now, and from this area right here. So was that an earlier Roman settlement, or was that the actual grade of this building? Notice I was standing next to those nice large stones, but there's another, looks like a top of a wall there of them. Or for that matter, maybe the base of a pedestal columned wall, same as over there. We'll take a closer look, but there you can see outcroppings to the side, which would suggest that there was a pedestal of nice stone built on that to hold columns on top of that. Here there are a number of what look like archaeologists' note envelopes, but they're kind of blowing around, it looks like. It looks to be a very irregular but quality stone, just like that stone over there. Here's what I mean about these indentations, that we think that this was some kind of a formal wall that would be seen, maybe not this side because it looks like it's just punched to flatten it out. We'll take a closer look at the other side in a minute, but maybe this was the floor level right here, and it was off of these that columns rose. I don't know, I'm just guessing. But that first part isn't making a lot of sense because this is even less worked over here than this side is. So my guess is that this was the surface, And the part on the right side is where they were going to butt other stones up against it for some reason. And this, who knows what it was. Maybe this was just plugged into dirt. Although it does obviously have a finished edge. Notice these grooves here, usually for locking those two stones together. Same thing right there. Notice this raised portion here. Normally that reflects a doorway. I'm thinking that this is the exterior and this is the interior, and that ridge is designed to block water from going inside. Just my guess. See some other little holes here that have some purpose. Same thing right here. And then this large square hole, probably again for holding and locking in place a large stone. Here another unworked stone. Is it possible that this kind of stone actually resides here? Yes, here's that little wall we were looking at before of worked stone from over there. And here the gravel again reflects that they've probably excavated down just this far. As you can see, they've got a ways to go to get to the level that stone was at, not to mention beneath it to where the foundation for those stones would be. Notice here we can see just a hint of a curve suggesting the end of a basilica, perhaps. But then it also arcs that way and then it arcs out that way, so probably not true. Now this is interesting. They've excavated out that huge wall, a thick wall, showing here that its base is higher than, but almost at the same level as the base of whatever that is over there. So very interesting. It's the fun of being an archaeologist. You could actually answer these questions. Okay, now I'm at the southeast corner. We've just looked over all of this, and now what we're looking at is truly a large basilica, or in other words a church. And this, of course, because it always attracts the most interest, I suspect, and probably was the centerpiece of the community, is well excavated out. Here we can see cleanly and clearly the walls, the exterior, the interior wall, also what looks like paving right there on the inside curve there, and a large block that we'll look at in a few minutes when we get up there. Here another paving stone right here. Whether that was always in that place, I don't know. But again, notice how there are these platforms, if you will, out to the side. Were they simply buttresses? That's possible. Just to orientate, of course, in the basilica, that's the altar up there. The nave runs the length here. The narthex probably right there. And there's pedestal for that column. There were probably other pedestals dancing down through here to support the roof of this church. And on either side here we see a square room over there. This one giving us a little more hint as to what it was inside. It looks like it was just built out of that brick and didn't even have the usual arched vault that many of the ones we've seen have. Here's another survey marker. Of course, looking down into this, you don't see any way to access that room in there. Maybe there was another access over there on the perimeter or down in here that we can't see. But I have no clue what the function of this was, and it may be that this was just something that somebody threw the stuff over the top here when they restored this enough and put that cement on top to protect it. Now this entry stone looks like it was original, intended for this spot. Also has an uncanny look of a tombstone. These holes to the side here were probably for holding two doors that swung in and out. So the stone could have had multiple uses actually over time. Here's that little companion room. Again, it looks like it was either that's a support there, I guess that's what that would be. But what's interesting here is it appears that it had that same kind of a altar end to it. So was this like a small side chapel at the back? And could there have been the same thing over there, but the arched portion's now been gone? Of course, right here, pedestals. Whether those pedestals are original to that spot, I don't know. They may have just placed them there because it looked good. I mean, the archaeologists. So here we are at the altar. This may be the remains of a crypt for someone important at some point in time. And that stone may have been part of the cover of the crypt or some other function up here. Presumably, if it's sitting here, it's because they found it up at this end. But then on the other hand, all of this looks like it's been reworked in an effort to preserve it, and it probably has. And as you can see, this is a pretty good sized building for its time, I would imagine. And here north of the basilica, another room that's excavated, apparently at a higher grade. There's just some rock that they've taken out and stored here for the future. You can see some of it has those markings from something. It's a trace of something there, but there's even more of a trace there. Again, whether that was something that was done at the time they were made, that seems like it must have been. But how curious, does this represent just a random sweep of some tool when they were making them? Remnant of a roof tile, that little edge like that, that maybe being the part that blocks it. Since we're completely surrounded by farmland, it's quite possible that this hill, covered with pretty flowers, is just a rubble hill. And that this whole thing I'm standing on here is just where they put the excavation fill. They had to put it somewhere. But my guess is that this was not the extent of this town, that it ranged probably a considerable distance here, maybe several hundred yards out, all the way around us. A pretty spot. You wonder why they choose a particular place. It doesn't seem to be next to water. Certainly doesn't have the highest elevation. This is pretty good proof that we're standing on a rubble pile right here. These are pretty purple flowers, a deep, rich purple. In the midst of these hills just covered with flowers. So one last pan from the north, or correction, from the south, looking past the town that the monastery's in.